Name tag. Are we ready? Okay. Good evening and welcome to the Planning Commission meeting for January 10th, 2023. I'm Chair Mark Kogler. I'd like to call the meeting to order, and we start the meeting with the Pledge of Allegiance. So if you please rise and join me. Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Staff, if you could please call the Planning Commission roll.
Commissioner Christensen.
Present.
Commissioner Neal. Commissioner Gibson.
Present.
Commissioner Davis.
Here.
Commissioner Jorgensen.
Here.
Commissioner Covarrubias. Chairperson Kogler.
Here.
The record will reflect Neal and Covarrubias are absent.
Okay, thank you. Staff introductions, please.
Warren Frace, Community Development Director.
Marcy Reynoso and Ashley Peterson, Administrative Assistants.
David Ad.
Darren Nash, City Planner.
Is that all? Great, thank you.
Elizabeth Hall, City Attorney.
Oh, thank you. Sorry to cut you off. Okay, item E on our agenda are public comments regarding matters not on this evening's agenda. Are there any items to be before the commission that are not on the agenda? I see none in chambers. Do we have anybody calling in?
No callers.
If we do not, we will move on from E to item F, agenda items proposed to be tabled or rescheduled. Do we have any of those this evening?
Yes, we have one. Darren, you want to announce the continuance?
Yes, we are working on the item with Mr. Thorndike. There is some more information that we need to resolve, and we are thought it would be best to get that resolved rather than trying to discuss it tonight. So we're going to request a continuance for this item to the January 24th meeting, Planning Commission meeting, and staff is going to work with the applicant and their team to get the questions answered, get the plans correct, and get this back on the agenda as soon as possible.
Okay, thank you. I think it'd be appropriate for us to have a motion to continue this to January 24th Planning Commission meeting.
Mr. Chair.
I'm sorry to interrupt. Mr. Nash, is your intent to renotice the item? If not, we should probably open the public hearing and then have that motion.
The intent is date certain to January 24th, so opening the public hearing sounds like a good idea. Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right, we will open the public hearing on this item. Are there any comments from the public? There are none in chambers. Are there any calling in?
There are no callers.
We have no comments. We'll close the public hearing and bring this back to the commission for action. Is there a motion to continue?
Chairperson Kogler, I move to continue this item to a date certain of January 24th, 2023.
We have a motion from Commissioner Gibson, second from Commissioner Christensen. Any questions? Okay, would you call the roll, please?
Commissioner Gibson.
Aye.
Commissioner Christensen.
Aye.
Commissioner Jorgensen.
Aye.
Commissioner Davis.
Aye.
Chairperson Kogler.
Aye.
Motion passes 5-0.
All right, thank you. That was our only hearing that was scheduled for this evening. So with that, we will move on the agenda, item H, which is discussion items by staff.
There are none.
Okay. We will move then on to our consent calendar, which is the next. We have two items for consent this evening. We have the Development Review Committee minutes of December 12th and the Planning Commission minutes of December 13th. Are there any comments, corrections, changes to be noted to either of those minutes? Seeing and hearing none, I will ask if there's a motion to approve.
Chairperson Kogler, I move to approve the Development Review Committee minutes of December 12th, 2022, and the Planning Commission minutes for December 13th, 2022.
I'll second that motion.
We have a motion from Commissioner Gibson, seconded by Commissioner Davis. Is there any further discussion? Seeing none, please call the question.
Commissioner Gibson,
Aye.
Commissioner Davis,
Aye.
Commissioner Jorgensen, Commissioner Christensen,
Aye.
Chairperson Kogler.
Aye.
Motion passes 5-0.
Okay, moving right along tonight, we are into other reports. We have potentially a few of those to talk about. The first is the Paso Robles Street report.
Yeah, originally we were going to have a meeting with the committee tomorrow. Due to the flood, we weren't able to get the agenda out on time, so we're going to be rescheduling that. Marcy will coordinate with the committee members about a new date on that meeting.
Okay, very good. Thank you for the update. Next up is the Housing Constraints Opportunities Committee and the Zoning Code Update Report.
I don't think we have any specific updates. The consultant and staff are still working on the updates to the codes. I would imagine the next month or so we'll probably be ready for a report back to Planning Commission on the progress.
Okay, very good. And then the last of those items is the DRC review rotation schedule, of which I do have one thing to discuss. I've now got a conflict on next Monday, the 16th, and I'm wondering if anybody can cover the DRC meeting for me. I'll gladly exchange or whatever.
What date was that? I'm sorry.
That's Monday, the 16th, next Monday.
I can do that for you.
Okay, Mr. Christensen, thank you. I'll owe you one or exchange you one or whatever it takes.
I think you already got one for me.
All right, thank you, appreciate that. All right, I think that's all of the other reports. We are now moving on to item 7, Planning Commissioners' comments. Let's start with Commissioner Christensen.
I have none at this time.
Okay, Mr. Gibson?
Be safe. Trying to stay dry out there.
Okay. Commissioner Davis?
Just kudos to our emergency services and in this crisis time. And I know it's not just fire and police. I think staff's been pretty busy. So compliments to everyone how you're handling the situation.
Commissioner Jorgensen?
I would just ask that in the future, when there's only one item and it's canceled, perhaps we could get a phone call, even if it's half an hour before the meeting. I appreciate it. Thank you.
Okay. And I would also join Commissioner Davis, and I'm sure all of us, in a big thank you to all of the first responders and all of the city departments and staff, many of whom I know were thrust outside of their normal roles, as is evidenced by the fact that the one agenda didn't get out. I know everybody is redirected, and we appreciate the efforts, and I know the community does, so thank you. Okay, staff comments.
Yeah, so we'll give you a little bit update on the flood. So that was not an expected event. All the modeling for the river showed that we were going to be below any flood stages, but that changed drastically Monday morning. So we quickly activated the Emergency Operations Center, basically redirected all city staff to emergency operations. We have a chart here that kind of shows what happened. So here's Paso Robles. This is a rainfall chart just for yesterday. So the dashed line, this is basically the watershed that feeds the Salinas River through Paso Robles. So Santa Margarita Lake, which is the Salinas Reservoir, is located right here. So you can see the upper watershed got between 6 and 10 inches of rain. Basically, it looked like in about an 18-hour period. Down to Paso Robles, we were kind of in the 4 to 5 inch rain. So originally, the river was projected to be kind of here at the monitor stage around 24 feet. I think it topped out at almost 33 feet. And this all happened very quickly yesterday morning. And as a result, we ended up having to close the 13th Street Bridge because the water was getting very close to the bridge deck. We evacuated the Navajo neighborhood and a portion of the Riverbank neighborhood. Paso Robles industrial area had to be evacuated, as well as some of the North River industrial. And then we had a lot of kind of small stream flooding throughout town, especially up around Creston Road and Scott Street. There was a number of houses that were flooded there. Trees down and that hit houses, about a half dozen of those as well. So The staff spent most of yesterday just trying to track all that, feed that information back to the EOC so they can make decisions real time on evacuations and that sort of thing. Dave, you want to give any kind of further update? Dave was in the middle of all of it.
David Athy, city engineer. So, we went around and we looked at a lot of the places, kind of calibrate ourselves, the engineering department, about what does a real flood look like? Because as Warren mentioned, we got up to about, well, we keep saying this term 32 feet. The gauge in the Salinas River is at the 13th Street Bridge, and its 0 point is about 15. So where the gauge is, it was up about 16 to 18 feet in that range, about 2 feet from the bottom of the bridge. So it was a really significant storm event. So it's really good for us to get out and say, okay, what does a really significant storm event look like? Obviously what we saw yesterday, but beyond that, we get to see high water marks in different neighborhoods. So as Warren mentioned, Riverbank, the end of Navajo over here behind Albertsons were two areas where we had residences that were threatened by the floodwaters. And if it kept raining and we got a higher intensity storm, it could have got up into those neighborhoods. So basically, it was really good that we didn't get beyond a 100-year flood because it was right there. We were at a 100-year flood. Well, I think what we saw yesterday was pretty close to it. It didn't flood those neighborhoods. They were protected. Part of that is our flood ordinance that we have. So everybody's got to build 2 feet above the floodplain in Paso Robles. And if by looking at calibrating the 13th Street Bridge, its elevation was at 32 feet. It corresponded really with the elevation for the flood. 100-year flood is about let's just say 695, so I don't remember off the top of my head. That gauge was at 695, so we were hovering right there at 100-year flood. So I think what's important and take away for me is the flood ordinance and all the stuff we go through and working with applicants and having them elevate their house sometimes causes a lot of irritation with folks. And, they don't like it sometimes because it costs them money to bring in fill and do that stuff. But the bottom line is it really protects their home and really protects the community. And none of these structures flooded, which is really a great thing for me to see as a city engineer, because now I know what a 100-year flood looks like. We can also take these charts and what we've learned and be better able to forecast. Because yesterday we were kind of just on the go trying to figure out, okay, if it gets to this level, what does it mean? We had people out in the field looking at the gate, looking at the subdivisions. At the same time, we're reading the gauges in the city hall, in the EOC. Trying to make those calls. How much farther is this going to be? How much farther is this going to go up? So that the blue line on that little graph right there represents about a 2-foot rise every hour. So it's going up a half a foot every 15 minutes. The Salinas River, and that's meteoric. That is just skyrocketing up there. There's no getting away from that. So, having all these tools available to us really is, one, a great thing. And two, that nothing flooded. And it really speaks to the job you folks do and having to approve these subdivisions and do these things. And it speaks to why it's important that we, design these to the FEMA flood maps and do all that work. Really, there was a few areas where, there was a big water tank that came floating down the river. Or there was an RV that kind of got buoyant, kind of floated around a little bit. But nothing catastrophic came down, right? Nothing there wasn't an RV that floated out or some piece of the house or something else that got jammed underneath the 13th Street Bridge. Because, like I said, we had 2 feet of clearance at the peak. I mean, I guess the bottom line is I want to thank you for all the decisions, you as a group make to protect people from flood hazards. They're hard decisions to make, but they're the right decisions to make. And I think what we just saw proves that. Overall, citywide, damage-wise, I mean, we're seeing some of the same flood issues that we've seen in the past, like Vine Street near 24th. Mountain Springs comes down there, dumped a whole lot of sediment in actually Vine Street. So it's about a foot and a half right now, thick of mud. We've got plans to fix that in the future up by the, working with the cemetery district and the county to put a big flood basin up there and divert water into there, drop the sediment, put the water back in the creek and let it go, and then fix the drainage at Vine Street. It also allows us to see other areas around town that need to be fixed. Luckily we didn't see a lot of uncontrolled damage, just regular things. We saw water overtopping a curb on Airport Road, ran down an embankment, washed out the back of the abutment for these culverts. Not very big culverts, but that's the kind of typical damage you see. So the city's really invested a lot, and it's really paying off for us. Of course, there were areas, there was a whole bunch, I learned a lot. There was a whole bunch of water that came down Meadowlark Road, so from the county. And not a lot of water that actually came off the back end of Venado out there at the end of, I don't know if you've been out the end of Meadowlark, but out there. So it was really good to see that, because Beechwood, which you folks have approved, they have to deal with that water. So knowing how much water is coming down there, we've got a really good idea, and we can calibrate that now and give that information back to the design engineers and say, hey, you really got to watch this, because the water was basically as the width of the road. It's about 30 feet wide and about 3 inches deep at the center of the road. So it's crowned, so it's a little deeper on the edges, running around the corner on Airport Road and going down to the next street into the first available storm drains that are down there. So that was really good to see, so that we can get Beechwood really straightened away. But other than that, I mean, the city did pretty well. City staff, Brian Cowan and Warren Frace did an excellent job in the planning division. And of course, the fire and everybody else did a fantastic job doing those emergency calls. So that's about it. I'm happy to answer questions. I can go on and on and on. Like the wastewater plant was flooded, but it survived, and the river, all our utilities were intact. So we're sitting pretty well.
I would like to lead off with one question. What's your projection for North and South River Road opening?
I don't have an answer for that. I know that there's a whole lot of mud flows coming off those. I mean, that stuff, we kind of like to describe it as it melts. That dirt melts when it gets rained on. It's a lot of silty type material, and it doesn't hold water very well. So when it gets wet, it liquefies. So got to let it dry out a little bit. Scrape it off. Some more will come down. Scrape it off again and get it open as soon. But I guess the answer is as soon as we can. But maybe a day or two.
And given the fact that we have weekend rain, probably won't help the equation much either.
That's right. I think we're forecasted for 1 to 3 inches this weekend. Yeah. So, we'll watch this again and see where it goes. Interestingly enough, the yellow on that bottom graph, the yellow is like a minor flood stage. The red is medium flood stage, and there's actually one beyond that, like major flood stage. So we didn't get close to that. But with this next storm, the river's not dropping as fast as it was in the past, right? Because there's a lot of water in the upper watershed that's still coming down at us right now. So we're just going to have to watch it this weekend and take appropriate action if it gets going again.
Sure. Yeah. Mr. Davis.
David, you mentioned Beechwood. Obviously, I didn't get out and about to kind of look, but how did Olson Chandler fare with all the grading that we'd done? Grading was an issue. How did the flooding work out there? Not good.
No, I mean, honestly, they opened up a really big site, over probably 100 acres of grading. And, you know, they've done the best they can to create basins and contain the water and do the things. But they're right. They're kind of in that point where they're right in the middle, and they needed some other infrastructure in place. So a lot of water came down Linné Road. So they're working on that. They're working on getting these they call Baker tanks, these big tanks, usually on environmental cleanup sites. But they're going to pump water into those, filter the water, and then put it in Turtle Creek, discharge it. So they got, I don't remember, I think it's like 44 million gallons or something of water to deal with on the site. So.
Yeah, I didn't see it. I just heard people talking about it, so I was just curious about your opinion, how we fared there, because it's in progress.
I mean, any site that's open right now is not going to be doing very well. It's just, that was just an incredible rain storm.
Yes, Mr. Jorgensen.
Is there any need to, when the river recedes, will there be any need to structurally review the bridges to see if there's any undermining, if the structure was undermined in any way?
We'll definitely do that. We went out today to look at infrastructure and put the list together for the FEMA, because FEMA and the emergency responders are asking us. So when it goes down, we will look at it. The bridge is designed to pass the 100-year flow. We saw that yesterday, so that's, you know, very good news. That's not the highest flow we've seen. And I think it was our capital projects engineer told me that she was standing out there with the public works director in the past, and the water was to the soffit or the bottom of the bridge, and they had trees and things hitting the bridge. So it could have been 2005 or 1990. I think it was 1995 when that happened. So, you know, it's, you know, from an engineering point of view, it's incredible. We hit 25,000 CFS, cubic feet per second. I mean, that's an incredible amount of water. So.
A couple of questions in regards to that. I think also in the 80s, it was at the bridge level on 13th Street. So the Linné area, that was a good question to ask because I was out in that direction earlier in the day. And I noticed a lot of the water is just standing. It doesn't really flow real easily from that area. It's always kind of been like that. What do they do to deal with that now? I mean, now that they're in the midst of this project, do they have to kind of look at mitigating that? I mean, there's a lot of water that just stands there. And, you know, the basins are great, but what do they do with the other underlying areas that are just holding the water because it's so flat?
Right. So, you know, the plan is to elevate the sites. So as you can see, like they brought some 4 or 5 feet of dirt in, you know, have been shifting it around the site. So the idea is to bring more dirt in, create drainage in those flatter areas, especially on the south side. On the north side, which we call PA9, which is that triangle piece right in front of our town, they'll have to probably bring in soil there. They're going to put an underground drainage system in also to handle that water. And as a matter of fact, I was just talking to the design engineer last week about this. So they're also putting in swales and grading it to get water to go back to these new drains that we're installing. We're having them install a new drain on Linné Road, kind of up past where the old, where the entrance is, where they're hauling across the road, up near those little weir kind of containment ponds on the north side. There'll be a new 3-barrel 36-inch culverts taking water down through the development and over to Turtle Creek. And then they'll grade water from the new roundabout that's going in back to that point. And then on the other side, they'll discharge it in along that swale that goes down to Airport Road. And then there's a series of ponds that are split up throughout the site that handle each specific area, and then those discharge to our storm drain system. And they're going to be designed to meter out and match the pre-development peak flow. So, you know, basically a lot what we see here today, one of the reasons why you see that like steep point in that graph is because we have a lot of paving in the watershed. So that flashes and comes off quick and heads down to the river, you know, road and then river, and then heads up here as fast as it can.
Well, that's what I'm thinking. We're adding a lot of that effect into the Turtle Creek area as well from that. If that's where it's going to go.
We're requiring them actually the Planning Commission required them to mitigate that back to pre-development flow when you guys did your approval. So that means that what comes off before, what came off now prior to all the grading and stuff they've done is the same flow they got to have come off the site when it's completely built out. So those basins are designed to meter out the flow so it doesn't overwhelm Turtle Creek and it doesn't overwhelm Scott Street and Creston Road or any of the drainage downstream. So it's going to basically think it's seeing what it saw in the past.
Okay, thank you. And so then one last question that I have. In regards to the Santa Margarita Lake, I know, do you guys get reports on, are they monitoring the spillway there? Because I know yesterday there was a certain point pretty much where it was reported it was 108%. And it was definitely going to be capping the spillway. And I think that's when we got a big surge through here in that area. Is that something you guys get highlighted on a regular basis? Because obviously that's where the flow is. The majority of the big push comes from, is from that area.
Yeah, so we coordinate with the county flood control and the city of San Luis. And my understanding, there was, I think, 7 feet of water coming over the spillway. So, it wasn't holding anything back. What's coming in is going out.
Right.
I think the public works or the utilities director told me, but I think it was like a couple hundred acre feet that were coming at us.
Coming out of it.
Yeah.
It's pretty impressive. One last question. The sandbag fill location down here, fantastic to have. Have they thought about maybe picking another spot? Because as that river gets full, it might be a suggestion I would make that we have another location. It's a little higher ground, easier to get access to traffic-wise, because they were also having to shut the freeway portion down, and getting there was a little bit of a chore for some people. And then the question I have is there another location on the other side of the river? I didn't know if there was, but I was asked and I didn't know an answer to that. I didn't see it on the map. So I thought maybe we might want to approach that as well, maybe somewhere out by the old fire station out there or something to that effect, because I know there were a lot of people that were asking those questions, and online has a great map to where the location was, but getting there was quite troublesome for part of the day.
Yeah, we can pass that on to Public Works, and I know that either Fire Station 2 may be a good location if there's room. Definitely Fire Station 3 when it's built and the Union Road roundabout's done. That would be also another good location. So we'll pass that on. So.
All right. Thank you.
Other questions? Just a couple of things. Picking up on Commissioner Christensen, one of the TV stations I was watching was highlighting one of the communities, and it appeared as though they had gone in knowing where floods occur in various neighborhoods, and they had sand in those neighborhoods or adjacent to those neighborhoods, like at dead-end streets and things, sandbagging places, which I thought was a really good idea. And now that we've got the knowledge of the observation of this flood, maybe the city could actually think about dispersing these even over more than just 1 or 2, but 4 or 5 or 6, whatever, to get them close to where people need them to be, because it's pretty hard, I think, for a lot of people to haul sandbags very much distance. So it looked like it worked really well, just an observation. My other observation is that I have a pretty commanding view of the river from where I live, and I spent almost all day yesterday like a little kid with my nose pressed up to the window, just watching the river. It was amazing. Yeah. And every time I thought it can't get any higher, it's not going to go to there, it would go to there, and it kept going to there. And it was like, and I'm understanding more from this map, it seemed like there were surges of water that must have flushed out new debris fields, because every once in a while you'd see this surge of materials going by at a very rapid pace, a lot of which was vegetative material, but a lot of which was man-made materials, rapidly leaving town. And I'm curious, where does that end up? And does anybody do any cleanup of all of the plastics and things that are going somewhere at a rapid pace under 46 and headed ever to the north?
Yeah, the water tank too. So in Paso Robles, the stormwater department, they do a creek cleanup day. And then there's Earthshine, who also do a lot of cleanup on right behind Albertsons. I've run into those folks a couple times when they're down there working. Like I said, Earth Day, or not Earth Day, Creek Day. David Lucaro used to lead that effort. Kim Porter does that now. And so they get all like the different groups that come down and remove tons I think it was a couple tons every year of material that goes down, that's in the river, and there's still more down there. Obviously we've got some, a population that brings a lot of stuff into the river area. And so it's a never ending cleanup goal we do.
Yep, but it certainly appears that the event yesterday pretty well flushed everything out of there. So
yeah, I mean, there's still a lot of stuff. I mean, if you go up by Larry Moore Park, you'll see, rafts and rafts of debris that are caught on the trees that are still on the river. And that will be something that, we may need to address this summer.
well, you guys did a great job, and I know it was a painful but a good learning experience at the same time. So
Yeah, I mean, it was, a learning experience, but not too painful. I mean, obviously there were some houses that were flooded, and that's very unfortunate, but overall, could have been a lot worse.
any other comments or questions? Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
So in case you've never seen the Wero Creek flowing, which it hasn't flowed for 30 years, it's flowing right now. So it might be a while before it goes again. So you might want to go take a look at it. So speaking of Wero Creek area, Airport Road, we've got a lot of environmental documents queued up for public release. So we've got the Majestic EIR very close to public release. I would expect it's going to start circulating in February. The mitigated negative declaration from Caltrans for the Union Road, New Airport Road overcrossing at 46 East. I expect that's going to be ready for public circulation very soon. We've got the Stravinsky Industrial out for public review right now, and probably Triana Winery will be out in the next month or so as well. So just be aware those projects are all going to be out. You'll probably start to hear from folks about those. We'll get you early copies of the EIR and the interchange documents so you're aware of those. And you're likely to start to get some questions and comments, and those will all likely start to show up on your agendas in the spring, I would guess. The Caltrans document won't, but it does influence a lot of these other projects, so it's good to know exactly what's in that document as well. And then finally, we have application period open for Planning Commission. So the deadline to apply is February 10th, right, Marcy? February 10th. So I think Commissioner Gibson, Christensen, and Jorgensen are eligible to reapply. So we're encouraging everyone, as well as the general public, to apply if they're interested in the position. And that'll conclude staff's report.
Thank you very much. Any other business or issues that need to come before the commission? If not, a motion to adjourn would be in order.
So moved.
A motion, Commissioner Davis, a second by?
I'll second it.
Mr. Christensen, all in favor, aye?
Aye.
We're done, thank you.
All right.